Send a legal notice.
Yeah,
Oh, no, I don't need to have that discussion.
I do too.
He
But
wants,
I don't say that to
he wants you to set, Don, he wants you to send Al a legal notice.
We need to have a discussion.
I better not.
Yeah,
You what?
don't let Daryl send something like that to me, they'll quit on us, so.
Well, we didn't.
I'm so different.
We have lots of people waiting.
Right.
Carl, that'll happen soon
There
enough,
he is.
so.
Yep.
I hear him.
What was the upcoming election?
Correct.
Yeah.
Peter, did you get an email from Megan?
I did, and I'll have it on Thursday.
17:30.
I'll come in and then, when you guys are open a little later, so,
Oh, okay,
okay?
sounds good.
Next village board meeting, I won't be able to be here. We have to be in Hamlin. The next one.
White day.
Like that? Yeah, that's why.
Those damn clocks are
It is 7.
Good evening, and I'd like to call to order the Village of Webster Workshop for June 5th, 2018. It is 7 o'clock, and we have all but one present. I believe that, however, Al should be arriving shortly. We have a couple of items to discuss on the agenda tonight, and the first one is the village band. And there was a meeting, there have been several actually, but there was a meeting recently between Harvey, myself, and Al. And we discussed the items that you see in front of you, and we are, I will summarize them a little bit for you. In terms of the band plan going forward as a group, one of the things that we talked about is if they stay under the umbrella of the village, that there can be no fundraising. That is something that is not legal if they are part of the village entity. We have talked, and one of the questions that they have, and I know that we've had a discussion before, and Don, you were present for that, was becoming a 501c3 on their own, and then they would be able to establish accounts, disperse funds, and it would be something, I think, that was, as we discussed it, it might be something similar to what we do in terms of payments if they were not under the umbrella necessarily of the village, but they were part of the village by taking the name, still the Village of Webster's Band. Then, similar to WASPs, what we do with WASPs, we might be able to do that for them as well. And right now, they are becoming contractors with the village. With the exception, I think, right now, there's, I don't know if we've changed with Tom yet, but there was a question up in the air, and that's being worked through with Heather. Personnel concerns, we do believe in terms of Marcia Nelcom, she is no longer going to be on our payroll, and at the moment she has not, and you'll be able to tell us a little bit more, at the time we had the meeting there, she was not replaced as the concert event coordinator. We were concerned about Ted Plant as the electronic tech. He tendered his, if you want to call it, resignation to that. He came in, he brought in all of the equipment that had been stored at his place, and that is now in the back, but we do not want to have it stored there. Most of it does belong to the village, but in terms of the logistics of coming in to get it for band concert and returning it, et cetera, it would be better served being off-site here. But he did leave a list of all that is there, so. I believe the designation for librarian is, I have that here somewhere, was discussed, and Mary Crockett will continue to serve as the librarian as of right now. And I talked about the village will continue to post the band's concert schedule on the village website, which we did. We also put it into the tax bill, where there was a small letter explaining the increase in the sewer rate and our tax rate for this year, along with some dates for the bid, as well as the village band. We did have a discussion about that and what I would like to have the band do, and we were going to look at dates, and I looked at them. The band, unfortunately, often plays the night we have our village board meeting. So it's often difficult for the band to come to a board meeting or board members to go to the band. However, there is an opportunity, and I would like to have the band come on June 28th. I believe you have a concert on the 21st. You do not have a concert on the 28th. Then have one, I believe, maybe for July 4th or whatever after that. But the 28th is an open date that we have a board meeting. And I would love to have some band members come, whether you have a trio or quartet or something, and you want to play an introduction and discuss some of the dates and what you do and so on. That would be very, very nice. We would love to have that as an opening to our board meeting. That would help to publicize the band and the concerts and so on. Okay? So I did look at that, and I would suggest that as a date, the 28th of June, if you have some members that are available to come in. We did have, I think, once the course of the Genesee came in, right?
Yeah.
And we had a quartet sing a little bit, and then they talked about what they did and what they do. So that would be very nice to have. And I invite you formally right now to come to our board meeting on the 28th of June. Should be an open date, I think, for you. You as board members have some questions that you would like to ask regarding that which you have seen in front of you, the questions that are here, and the concerns that have been raised here.
Are there three band members here?
Yes.
Can you introduce yourselves, please?
I'm Barb Madura, I'm French horn, and I'm the liaison.
Thank you, Art.
And I'm Donna Schmidt, I am the bassoon player, and I am currently the vice chairman of the board.
Thank you, Donna.
And I'm Jean Cosette, I play clarinet, and I'm our treasurer of our $73.09.
Thank you, ladies. Thank you.
Dale, would you like to add anything to
Has Harvey found anybody yet? We met with them the other day. Somebody was gonna pick up the equipment. You guys are gonna find an area to store the equipment? Any
Two things
progress?
regarding that. First of all, I'm a little surprised that I wasn't included in that meeting, and I've never been able to meet you personally. And as a liaison between the band and the village board, I, would have liked to have been included on that. And to answer your question, yes, we have got someone that is going to store the equipment. He was not at the last rehearsal, but looks pretty definite that we'll get that stuff out of your way.
Okay, good, thank you.
You're welcome. Pleasure meeting you.
Pleasure meeting you.
that? Would be all of it that's back there. I mean, I don't know. I know that the individual who came in was interested in the bass drum and something else, but there are
Well, I know,
the stands, the speakers that go along with everything, all of that.
Yes, Tom spoke to an individual that said that stepped up and said that he would be willing to store and that sort of thing. So as soon as we have the details on when it will be picked up and the exact location, I'll let you know.
Okay, probably best to communicate with the office, with Joe.
Okay,
Or Heather. Heather is away now until next week, Wednesday, but if there is a date prior to that you may intend to come in, you can call the office and ask for Joe, and she can coordinate being up here, opening doors and that kind of thing.
great, thank you.
Yeah, in all likelihood, that'll happen because our first concert's next Thursday, so it'll be within the week, for sure.
Well, there was a gentleman that stopped yesterday.
Tom Herb?
But his understanding was he was only going to take the bass drums and cymbals. So when he saw the rest of the equipment, and
Well,
he
he
said,
was getting it for a performance or a particular concert. He was unaware that, we were in this situation right now
Okay.
with the inventory of the equipment. So he was
Okay.
just getting it, what he needed for the concert.
well, in the end, just so you're aware, he did not take anything.
Oh, okay.
Because it was unclear to both of us because we didn't have prior knowledge. We didn't know who he was when he walked in the door.
Yeah,
put it
if
that
that
way.
happens again, don't hesitate to just give me a call and say, hey, I got this guy here, he says, and, I
Well,
can either
Heather
yay or
did-
nay.
Heather did try and get a hold of Harvey, but evidently that couldn't happen right away when he was here. So in the end, he did not take any equipment.
Well, like I
Okay, you
said,
have her
as a
name.
liaison,
Or, yeah,
Okay.
if you
Yeah.
contact me, I'm a little easier to get a hold of.
okay,
Okay? Thanks, Joe.
sounds good.
Yeah, we're sorry we didn't invite, we didn't even know. Heather sent out, and Harvey never said anything, so me and Daryl met with Harvey, we didn't even put two and two together, even though.
Par for the course, it's okay.
Well, I might suggest that maybe once a month, one of you attend one of our meetings, and with a little update as to how your turnout is looking and how things are going with the band. We'd love to hear from you, and this is my first time meeting with the band, and I think we'd all be interested in hearing how you're doing, as well as we'll come to the band concerts. I always enjoy those. And, make a note that somebody should attend one of our monthly meetings,
I think-
bi-monthly, bi-weekly, twice a month. But we'd love to see you and hear what's going on.
Al, were you here when I said that?
28.
Make a note of it.
When we spoke, maybe it was last fall, we were in the process of putting together bylaws.
Not really
You-
bylaws, kind of guide,
Operating
Guidelines,
yeah,
because
yeah.
bylaws I don't think are.
Because I don't believe we
I think we had a discussion on that, I'm not sure.
yes, we did. Quite an in-depth discussion with your expertise on saying yay or nay on what we can and cannot do. Do you not recall?
No, I recall. You have bylaws if you're some kind of an entity, but the problem is the village band is not any kind of a separate entity other than the village.
Right. That's why we
So-
said kind of guidelines, yeah,
Right.
operational
So
guidelines.
if you were your own not-for-profit corporation, you'd have a certificate of incorporation, you'd have bylaws, you'd have all that stuff.
Right,
But
right.
you're not, so
So we're not, so we don't.
you're nothing different. You're like the sewer department. They don't have bylaws either.
Code of conduct?
They don't have a code of conduct. They have a code of conduct.
There's some rules, though.
I didn't-
Or let's say our rules.
Traditions.
Do you have questions and concerns you would like to bring to the board?
You did mention about Tom. and his status now. When we had the meeting with Heather, she said that would be absolutely no problem at all, is to continue on the way he,
Right, the only thing we're looking into right now, I believe, was in terms of the retirement, and that was a question that I had regarding that, because of the fact that, and I don't know how it plays out, because I asked Heather to look into it, but with the retirement, I know that when I was working for the county and was also teaching, both of them are entities that offer retirement, and in fact, you can cross over between them. The 10 months that I served as teacher made the year. And there was no credit necessarily given for the additional time spent in the summer working for the county. So my question was, in terms of the retirement, the money that is paid, the salary that is paid, if he were to retire, then that would be incorporated into most likely the last 5 years that he worked in terms of his final retirement percent and so on. But the credit hours probably are not. So I wanted clarification on that. That's where I'm coming from. Okay.
and he'll probably follow up and make sure everything's.
Most likely. And as I think we had a discussion, and this is a question I guess I'd have to put to Don as well, but if you were to go to a 501c3 and be able to fundraise on your own and raise monies, which would be for, most likely for music and your scholarships and those, you know, additional things.
Well, I think the scholarship is still a separate entity, that's, you know.
But if you were to raise that money, as I said, we probably would be able to do something that is similar in terms of the band keeping the title, Village of Webster Band, and you know, continuing to play at Harmony and so on. We would probably be able to do what we do with WASP, I would imagine, that we can set into the budget a certain amount that is contributed to the band. So that's something to think about if you're considering going forward with the 501c.
Yeah, the funding of the band, or at least the village's part of the funding of the band wouldn't necessarily have to change at all. You know, the village can, no different than the museum, or, you know, the village has subsidized the museum. No different than you know, the economic development, you know, WEDA.
So it's something to,
What would be the advantage to go the 501c?
Well, you could be your own, you'd have control over the band, you know, you wouldn't necessarily have these personnel issues with the village. You could, as,
Wait a minute, time out. What personnel issues?
well,
I'm-
that,
well, we have some personnel issues in that, in terms of things like with the retirement and so on, or reporting, there's nothing that comes from anybody that we have been paying in terms of the number of hours, any accountability. So there is a problem with that, and that's one of the things being addressed with Tom. How many hours are you putting in, all those things, because he has to, Heather has to, our clerk has to report those things.
I completely understand that, but why, I understand that you need those hours and, you know, it's law, but why now?
Why
I mean,
now?
this has been going on for,
Because it's the way it is, it's been going on for a long time. And
but why has
now-
it been allowed to go on? That's my question.
That I don't know, because issues have never been raised, I guess, to this point. So now that the issues have been raised, okay, and one was the removal of one person from your hierarchy or in the band, and as that happened, other things began to, especially with our new clerk, who has very much on top of things, is asking questions, because she has to do reporting. So now, these things are coming to light, and so they're being addressed. So, I guess that's the best answer I can give you, is that in the past, those things have simply gone on from year to year to year, and now,
And we completely understand that and know that, but this is where the issues came with Marcia, for example. She immediately thought that we were coming down on her. And we explained to her that, there's new people in the village, and these things, when they were originally instilled or created, were not really done correct. And that now we have to fix things. But it's just exploded. And it's a very tough situation for us to deal with. And as far as when you said earlier with Marcia that she's no longer, what we are planning on doing is we have changed some of the job description or the task, and we're looking at letting her have first refusal. Are you still interested or not? So, we haven't, she's not gone completely.
I don't
So-
think that we have anything, we would stand in the way of what you're setting up with her, and with any, in terms of establishing the different positions and the criteria for them and the responsibilities of them. We just need to be included in that and then have a discussion.
Well, I just want you to appreciate where we're coming from when someone has done something for 40 years. It's very hard to explain to them that, things do change and there's a right and a wrong way to do it, or, a more improved way. And it's been tough. So,
Yeah, I don't think there's any intent to put blame on anybody for anything. It's
we
just-
know that.
Yeah, so it
But-
was just, for example, I think a lot of it may have been a lack of communication between the band and the village board.
I
Nobody really
completely agree.
knew how you guys were operating things and vice versa. Like when it came to light that you had a petty cash fund. Well, there's a specific part of the New York village law that governs petty cash funds and how they have to be overseen by the village board. They didn't even know you had a petty cash fund, so.
Didn't we ask Heather about that though back in like January
But
or whatever it was?
it's not with Heather, it's with the way the people were taking care of everything for the last 30 to 40
Right,
years.
exactly.
And when some of us who's only been there 10 years brought up, how can you do this? This is not right. It was like, well, we've always done it this way, which you're so sick of hearing. And when you try, we're having a hard time trying to get people active and understanding. The group is 75% 50 or older.
Yeah.
And they feel that, those new people are coming in, trying to change everything, and it's, it's wrong and all this stuff. And it's hard to not really criticize them, but say there are better ways and correct ways. And it's been a tough year for us, very tough. And we can't thank the board and Village of Webster enough for supporting us through all of this. And so I think the key thing is the big C. We've got to communicate, and, Al, we're going to become buddies.
I was gonna leave, give you this before you leave. Yeah,
So-
I think so. If the band decides you don't want to be a separate entity, your own not-for-profit corporation, there's just got to be a lot more,
Accountability.
well, you got to be run more like a department of the village, and there's got to be more oversight and more, like you said, communication back and forth, just to make sure things are done correctly and not violating any kind of state laws or regulations or whatever.
I mean, there were times when nobody who the liaison was, for our band, and I feel that a lot of things I can come to you for, and you can bring them to the board, and exactly, it doesn't have to be,
But the advantage would be if you wanted to be your own separate entity, the village would write you a check once a year. And then whatever you guys, as long as you put on the concerts that they wanted, you do whichever, you do what you want. You're your own, and, you're
And they
your
can
own
do,
organization.
they can do their own fundraising as well, right?
Yeah.
That and you
Yeah.
can have your own, president and treasurer and vice president, 'cause now you don't have any capacity for that.
I think one of our biggest barriers is the cost of incorporating. It's a significant cost, and that was where we wrestled, because we did have those conversations.
Don might cut you a break.
Yeah.
The incorporation part is easy. The more complicated, and Peter could probably tell you this, is to get the tax exempt status from the
Yeah.
Internal Revenue Service. That's much more involved.
A little,
but he's a pro at it, right?
a little.
Doesn't your attorney handle that for you? No.
There's another
I
option.
second that.
Huh?
There is another option.
Right.
The other option is to leave it as it is, but form a Friends of the Webster Bands and have that Friends group raise money only. That'd be their sole function. The library has that structure, where the library is a government organization, right? Then they have a Friends of the Webster Library who actually raises money, private money, and then supplements the library's functions. That has, there's some good argument for that kind of relationship, by the way. But, I mean, so there is another whole option out there available. And you can interlock boards in that regard, too. So they could actually have a treasurer and a director of that board that actually could be like the manager of the band, too, depending on how the village wanted to organize that structure. So there are other options. And that might work. So. And that would be another 501c3. But you wouldn't change your relationship with the village. You would just have another organization that raises money in addition to the village's money, or the village's support, whatever that looks like.
Yep.
Talk to him.
Got your card?
I do. I do. Here you go.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. We're cruising now.
Good idea.
It is.
You don't even need Al.
We always need it.
Really? Anything else that you would like to discuss?
No, but I think you have other things you have to do, but I just want to sum up what we are to do. We're going to have a formal invite on the 28th of June, preferably as many band members as possible, and maybe a little entertainment.
Yeah.
And these are always at 7 o'clock
Yeah.
in this location. And what we're going to do is probably, and this is up to your discretion, on a monthly basis, we will communicate attendance, where we're performing, what we've done, and what else would you like from us besides?
If you can't make it here, a representative, because you have a concert
Mhm.
tonight, you can put that probably into an email, you can send it out.
Okay.
And as liaison, if he has that information, you can present it to the
Here.
board.
Come
Perfect.
September, we'll come on, all you need us.
Yeah. But is a monthly basis okay? Okay.
That would be really good.
And what I will do, it'll be a package coming from me, and it'll include our treasurer's report, any pertinent minutes that we've had from our board meetings, and we will also include, when we have our board meetings, if you're available, I'd like you to come to those.
Okay. Fair enough.
Yeah, I would love to be there.
I love the idea of the Village of Webster Band, and working together a little bit more, I think will be a benefit to you as the band, the representatives and the band members, as well as us and the village as well. So look forward to that.
So do we.
So then you will
And
be
you guys
included
play
in
instruments
all
when you join?
future meetings.
Gary does, he plays the flute.
No, I do not.
Sorry to tell you
Not very
last year,
musically
but
inclined at
I
all.
have to practice.
We can make anybody into a percussionist.
And just to bring you up, our most recent event, we had a mixed concert with Willink Middle School. For their spring concert, we did the theme from Star Wars, the Star Wars collections with their 8th grade band, and it was wonderful. It was wonderful for us, it was great for the kids, and it's something we hope to get into an annual event
Nice.
with the schools, so.
I think that's wonderful because they get to see that music transcends the high school setting. It's a lifelong thing. People are still playing into their,
And we very intentionally
Forties,
made sure we sat every other person. So it was somebody from the village band, one of the students, and
Side by
so
side.
forth, so that you could,
Yeah.
talk with them and, yeah, it was an awesome experience.
Thanks for coming.
well, thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, Elise.
And we will see you in a couple weeks.
Okay,
Thank you so much for your time and having us.
thank you.
Sounds good.
Next on our agenda, we have a discussion on microcell towers, micros or small cell antennas. I included in the packet, I believe you have it, this piece that I pulled off of the internet, small cell antenna installation considerations. And as one looks at it, I'll just read the introduction. Small cells are currently a hot topic, and they are. As I went online and have gone online, there is a overwhelming amount of material that's out there. It's becoming a topic of interest for local governments. A small cell is just like it sounds, a small cellular antenna typically designed to provide cellular coverage to a smaller geographic area than a cell tower or full rooftop cell site. While many small cells are installed on utility poles or street and traffic lights, small cells can be installed almost anywhere power can be placed. These placements require approval of local governments, the approval process is currently a hot topic within the small cell industry. In some areas, state or federal regulations differ from local requirements. Until some consistency can be implemented to address concerns of local governments while serving the needs of the wireless carriers, it is anticipated that the permitting process will be a source of frustration for both local governments and cellular providers for the foreseeable future. We are in that position right now of looking at regulations that will govern the placement, the permitting process as well. We do not have one, I don't think, for small cell antennas. What I wanted this for was, if you look at the next part of this, it says there are items that need to be addressed. Small cell aesthetics, small cell equipment placement, capacity of pole light post to support small cells, the growth or change of small cells over time, utilities needed to serve the small cell, and application intake procedures for small cell use and building permits. And what caught my attention here especially is the fact that Carl and I had a conversation yesterday, that conversation involving number 3, the capacity of pole light posts to support small cells. And brought to my attention the fact that some of these utility poles and so on are overloaded right now in terms of what's up there. And how do we put up more? How do we regulate? And is there some kind of engineering?
Well, there's a lot of things that we have to consider, and the main thing that I talked with Daryl about was that they can mount these things on the poles, but there's equipment that goes along with these, coolers, and there's all kinds of different operating equipment, not just the small cell itself. They need to also be mounted either on the pole or on the ground right next to it. And these things can also be installed on light poles like our picture shows here. And it really could be an eyesore, it really could. And another situation that we have in our village that I've addressed from time to time is the fact that there's 2 poles at every site in every backyard in this village. First of all, if they want to come in and put these small cells in our neighborhoods, they have to get rid of it. If they get on these old poles, they'll be there forever. But first, before they do that, they have to get permission not only from us as a village, but also from the telephone, the electric, and the cable TV, because those 3 entities own a certain percentage of those poles. And so I can see where there'd be a great deal of frustration for the cell companies to put their small objects on any poles at all, because I don't think that they're gonna get a right of way to place it there. It's far into the future, I don't see that happening. And as a village, I don't think, if the possibility existed that we allow them to do that, and they get all the permits from these 3 other companies, they go on these poles, it's just gonna get more complicated because there's not just one cell server, there's not just one company. There's Verizon, there's all these others that compete with Verizon. They're gonna wanna get on there too. And they have that right to petition us to get on those poles. So pretty soon, you're gonna have quite a Christmas tree in your backyard with all this stuff on the poles. But before we grant them any permission to do anything, the phone company or the electric company has to get those old poles out of our backyards. I've heard so many complaints about these double poles in the backyards.
I don't agree.
I'm sure Will has too.
I was approached by someone who wanted to put one of these up at, sorry, I started talking. At Daniel Drive and West Main Street. They thought the pole was ours, they approached us. They said they were gonna go in, they're gonna replace the pole, it's got a street light on it, and, I think it has a street light on it. But they're gonna replace the pole and put this little can on top of it, and that's all it is, and I started looking into it, and it can turn really ugly really quick, it looks like. But before I even finished responding to them about that, or they're talking about that, we received something in the mail for Sanford Street in Corning Park, where there's already one that went through the State Historic Preservation, or the SHPO process. We never heard about it at all. But it already went through that process because that wasn't a pole that they thought was ours. So I don't know if the utilities can extend their right of way to these companies. From what I understand, as a cellular company, or they're considered a public utility that has a right to do certain things. But I question, there's in state law, I think there's the ability to have franchise. The village would have to have like a franchise agreement with somebody, but that's, I don't think that anticipated some of the technology we have today. It has steam and gas and electric, So there's something that you can put, or some sort of control you can have over it, but, and one other question, I don't know if it was Will that brought it up, or if it was probably my good idea, but the seeker portion of it, if you're looking at individual sites, I think, I know we discussed it, or maybe it was Matt, really, if they're gonna talk about putting a network of these in, I think the seeker, you kinda almost gotta have the whole network ahead of time to look, because if they look at individual sites, it's gonna have a way different impact than, you know, 10 sites for one company, and then multiply that by 5 or 6 different companies that wanna do it.
It's gonna be a mind-boggling thing, and it's just, it can really get out, like you just said, it can really get carried away with this.
Yeah, there's a lot
And
of.
I don't think that the 3 companies that are on the telephone poles right now would allow any further action by anyone else to put anything else on those poles.
I think it really looks,
They're so crowded.
it's how they make the deal though.
Yeah.
If they come in and
Yes.
replace your pole, put all your new stuff in at their expense.
Yeah, who takes the old one out?
Well, it's a different ballgame though. Once you
Yeah.
talk updating poles and taking out old ones, now it's a better conversation for the telephone company and.
Absolutely.
So,
And
I
it's
wouldn't
not a
say-
high priority for them.
yeah, but, yeah, so I wouldn't say it's out of the question for them to agree to it.
You know, they,
Yes, Will,
if
sorry.
they wanna, you know, if they find that a pole has too much storm loading on it already, they gonna, who's gonna replace that pole? Is telephone or RG&E gonna replace
They'll
that
move
pole?
on to another one.
And then
Exactly.
charge Verizon or whoever for the
Depends how much
labor
they
to
want
place
the
that
stuff
pole.
there, but.
It's not gonna happen. I
There's
know it's not gonna happen. I was an engineer there. I know it.
There's a whole lot of, the question I have, selfishly, I guess, there's a whole lot of,
You're next, Will.
there's a whole lot of small cell sites eliminate the need for, I don't know, hypothetically, a $250,000 tower we just built.
Yeah.
Could that shoot us in the foot as well?
Will?
No?
It depends on what type of technology.
I have no
Well-
idea. If it was up to me, it'd be Kansas.
Yeah,
Oh, you better jump in, hurry
If
up.
I spoke, no one else would have to speak.
Oh, well.
Oh, you have,
I spoke to 3 entities
Who's our?
this week.
Who?
First was Rebecca Rosito she's an attorney for NICOM, okay? Because I figured that would be the first line of defense. We call them and talk to them because I know they've dealt with it, because their phone's gonna be ringing off the hook, okay? And she said, well, first of all, we're operating under the Telecommunications Act of 1996, which was not created for this particular situation. And so the federal law and regulations right now are in a bit of a flux, and they're looking at a new rulemaking from the FCC possibly this summer. And the interesting thing about the FCC is the board that is made up of the FCC, a majority of them are stakeholders
Oh, yeah.
in the telecommunications. So they're pushing for this because
Yeah.
what they want to do is go completely wireless. They want to get rid of cable completely. That's why it's not going to really so much affect our tower. They're looking more at the other end of the spectrum for, you know, Wi-Fi in the house and everything like that. So the state right now currently has no additional restrictions on local decision-making for small cells, although Como was pushing to override the counties and the municipalities' individual rulemaking decisions, but that got pushed back by the communities and said, no, don't do that. Syracuse was the one I was told to look at, who created a telecommunications policy, but they have more control. The cities really have more control over the infrastructure than we do, because we don't have any control over that. It's the utility companies that have the poles and everything. I spoke to the city of Rochester. They started doing a permit process, and they have a few of them in there. But the problem they ran into is there's no address for the permits. What's the address of pole number 6, or pole number 25, or pole number 13? There's no address there, there's no tax ID, nothing to assign the permit to. So they stopped issuing permits.
Oh, there's a tax ID.
Oh, no, there isn't. Not from our side. We have a right-of-way there, but we don't have a tax ID.
I think there is for all the communication, or all the,
All
like,
community.
No.
RG&E's infrastructure has
They-
it's a
they-
900 number.
Yeah, but
I
we
mean-
don't have the tax.
No, but it's-
I know that. I
we
You
know.
mean us as a village?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
If you look at our,
Yeah,
No, it's not on our program, we don't own any of
You
that
guys
property,
worked it out.
they're not, no. So they stopped issuing permits, and what they do is they have the city engineers review each application, and they're scratching their heads on what to do. Then I contacted RG&E. They have several applications, some from last year that they haven't approved yet. They're being reviewed by their engineers, and they have no idea what to do with these things. So that's the problem. And what the worst part of, well, the most difficult part behind it all is that FCC is going to be pushing for these to be approved retroactive, just like, with the cell companies now. We can review them, but we can't stop them from coming in unless they can't prove that they need to cover that particular area. You know what I'm saying? That's really one of the only criteria they have, or we have, to say, no, you can't be in there. So what we need to take into consideration is, first of all, the reason why this all comes up is, one of the main reasons, because it's an eyesore, it can become an eyesore, but it's placed in our right-of-way. So what does that mean? Can we regulate the color, the square footage, the height, the distance between mini cells? Or we may not even be able to regulate the distance between mini cells because they can prove that they need that coverage. And can we charge fees? Can there be an application fee or an access fee to allow them into our property? And then that also includes insurance. The insurance I've seen that some municipalities have required from these telecommunication companies is in the upwards of over $1 million, naming the municipality as additionally insured. So if something ever happens, that we were covered. And if the infrastructure is placed in our right-of-way and something does happen, everybody's going to get sued. So that doesn't answer anybody's questions. It probably raises more questions, but everybody's facing the same problem. And even though Syracuse has created their telecommunications policy, at the end of the summer, when the FCC creates a new rulemaking, which they were so excited in '96 that it's been 60 years since they updated it, now they're going to update it again, that may mean that their telecommunication policy may become null and void based on what the FCC rules. So,
But we also have the Public Service Commission that's involved in it, too. They come first, as a matter of fact. If you have any question about that kind of stuff, if you approach the Public Service Commission and let them know what's going on, they'll look into it.
There could be no choice.
I remember an old story, whether it's true or not, about Abraham Lincoln. And there was a gentleman that came up to Abraham Lincoln and wanted him to vote a certain way, and Abraham Lincoln said no. Man asked him again and raised the amount of money he offered him to change his position. He said no louder. The man offered him more money, and then Abraham Lincoln yelled even louder. And the man said, "Why is it every time I offer you more money, you yell louder?" He said, "Because you're getting closer to my price."
Yep,
Money talks.
it sure does. It sure does.
Going along with Nikon, Nikon offered at their February legislative meeting, they had a discussion on this. And some of the points that came out from that is that the regulations proposed severely limit local control. As you said, the FCC committee, basically telecom industry personnel. The application fees to put these devices on municipally owned structures limited to quote-unquote actual and reasonable costs, capped at $50. There's also a short time limit on applications. If not granted within the time limit, I believe it's like 90 days, it's automatically granted. the cost to have them on a municipality pole owned structure, once the application's been granted, is capped at $200 for non-wooden structure, $20 for wood. That would be per year, that's your great income. In Connecticut, where they are currently being installed private-owned structures, fair market price seems to be about $2,000. So, you know, it's,
So that pole in our backyard doesn't look too
it
bad.
doesn't look too bad. It's like a windmill.
Well, even though, you know, these small cells will be installed only in places where there's perfect point of sight. All right, so they're not gonna be, you know, most of all of our backyards are filled with trees and stuff, and they can't put them back there, but what concerns me is how to walk the road. And,
That's right, that's the right of way.
Yeah.
That's the public right of way, it's not your backyard. Really. So,
He thinks it is.
well, I'll tell you,
Wow.
I sampled a couple of
Wow.
municipalities in the town. The town board has met with Verizon over this issue. They've yet to come to any conclusion. Town, we are under the impression that these little stations attached to telephone poles and buildings should be assessed on the town tax roll. And that would fall in line with telephone poles and other utilities. Interestingly. Below is a response from Mr. Kuhn after our meeting with him. For my reading, the present time assessor Donna Kumar is working with New York State on gathering more information on the application of assessment if the state feels the same way as the town. So they're looking at, you know, their
Taxable income.
taxable item, absolutely. There was another one from Spencerport. They own their own poles. They have electric line workers and so on. The original proposed antennas have changed from somewhat cumbersome deals to more compact attachments, but again, our electric supervisor has looked into what possibly would be the requirements to put them on our electric poles. The electric line workers would have to handle installation and most of the maintenance of these antennas would be on top of our poles above our primary circuits. Now, one of the things that I'm thinking of is we are still investigating, are we not, Jake, the possibility of, in fact, purchasing from RG&E these poles. Light poles that are handling electric and so on, so, you know, here we are, we're going into that situation.
Yep.
Do you know if they generate any noise? Has anybody ever?
There are fans that are on them, apparently. And they have, once they're on, they can put as many as they want to on it. That's one of the things that was brought up at NICOM. It says here, once the application's been granted, they have the right to put as many as they want on a structure. The word barnacles was used.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Similar to franchise agreements, but exclusive agreements are prohibited, no gross revenue fee. It will eventually make cable franchises obsolete. As you said, that's their goal.
Well, I know we
Cable
have-
franchise.
As far as I know, in the village, I think there's two, I would call minis. One is on 1 West Main Street, the bridal shop there. It's on a roof. And it's got the cables coming down, which to Martin Captain's credit, I think he built something around that to cover up the wires. I think he did. And then there's one on Xerox Building 208, maybe?
Plus there's the visible light on all those. They're green lights.
Say it again? I didn't hear you.
There's a green light that glows
Oh.
when it's running.
Okay.
Not that they would, you know, you see it on the cable TV things, but those are blue, these are green.
Huh?
So I don't know if that would bother anybody. Barnacles is a key word.
Yeah.
And having been a pole climber myself also, those things are terrible to try to get around. For those pole
Oh, I think it's gonna be bucket trucks.
The phone company would be crazy to let somebody else mount stuff on those poles. And we would be crazy to let them on our poles if we purchased them from RG&E.
So what we need is, we need to have something in our code, in law, village law, that we have here that deals with the permitting process, deals with some of the issues. Are we, there is one that, in New York State Senate Bill 6687, for Oyster Bay, the town of Oyster Bay, it's about 50-some pages long. I stopped reading it after about.
Well, Syracuse isn't that long, but it's like 12 pages.
But, yeah, that's kind of interesting, so they have something in there?
Jake just sent this to me.
Yeah.
Portchester, I found, yeah.
Yep. So what we need to do is take a look at these, I think. It needs to be something that we do soon, because if we've already had 3 inquiries and the town has had them, it might be good to coordinate with the, I think Don brought that up, and that's why I asked Supervisor Nestor whether or not they've had applications. And obviously it's Verizon, and Verizon's the one that has been here. We need to coordinate, I'd like to coordinate with them, so that, if we come up with something that's not just within the limits of the village necessarily, but hopefully it would be representative of Webster as well. But, it might come down to the village, because our density is much different than it is in the town. So the proliferation of them in a small residential area, like the village in here, would be different than it would be on a, development street or whatever.
But it's time for us to address this anyways, because our code's archaic when it comes to communications and cell towers and things. But would it be, since we are working on this code, would it be in our best interest, or maybe cumbersome to look at then solar and wind as well in our code? And that way we get it all taken care of one fell swoop and pay one price for.
I mean, I think that the concerns you brought up with solar and what's available now in terms of, Jacob, we've looked at clean energy and what they've put out there for solar and solar permitting and so on. Be addressing.
That one might be
And
easy.
Don, were you able to contact, or I didn't see anything regarding the firm in Pittsburgh?
I wasn't able to get a hold of them, but, they, it's similar to this outfit that you found on the internet, it's a consulting service, but it's a law firm that, they pretty much exclusively deal with helping the local governments with cable, wireless, broadband kind of stuff. It's the Cullen Law Group, and I could contact them to see what they would charge, but part of there is wireless facility regulations.
I think we should do
I had a question about, I know I brought up about franchise fees. Is that really just an assessment on the improvements that somebody puts in the right of way? Or is that just a fee?
No, a franchise is because, you're giving somebody the exclusive right to do something.
Oh, is that, okay, so it probably wouldn't apply in this situation because there's different companies that would be in there.
Yeah, I don't think
So it wouldn't be a
I
franchise.
don't think you can charge a franchise. Otherwise, they do it for cell towers already.
Yeah.
Nobody charges a franchise fee to put up a cell tower.
I didn't know what the term was in this use of it, so, that's why I was just checking. So I was thinking about Greenlight, and Greenlight went in and put stuff. Is that something that should have been addressed at that time? I don't know. Is there, there's something. I remember reading about somebody, a company utilizing the public right of way, having a fee or some sort of, they're using the public right of way to sell something, that there's a fee or something that could be associated with that. Yeah, I think they're excluded because they're a public authority.
Well,
Yeah,
Well,
I think there was.
if there's another company that comes in here to put a new optical cable up, like green light,
Mhm.
and they've got their trailer set up and they're pulling the line down through it, do they require a permit from us to do that?
No, they're like a utility.
Because
Yeah, what would I be permitting?
Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing,
I don't know, new construction.
nothing on the ground, so to speak, no structure, no, nothing else I can permit.
Unless you're saying that they do, they have some coolers or whatever. that they
Who
have
inspects it?
underground.
Yeah,
Who inspects it?
Would that?
sure, they're gonna get,
Well,
they're gonna
that's
get
what I'm
permission
trying
to
to-
put an ad in. Yeah, sure. Sure. If it's in the public right away, they gotta have permission.
They could be put up wrong.
Unit on the
Well,
ground.
that's their problem,
Yeah.
if their service doesn't work right. But it's fiber optic, it's not like it's voltage, it's not like you get hurt from it, or,
Oh,
you know, what do
You
you?
can if you look at it.
Huh?
You can if you look at
Well,
it.
don't look at
We're not talking about aesthetics.
No, I'm not meaning
No,
that.
it's
If you
like that.
look into the light
Oh,
coming
at
through
the
that, it'll
end-
blind
at the
you.
end of it?
it. Didn't you see the movie, Stay Away from the Light?
No, but I mean, there is a danger to the public if that cable gets out where somebody can view the end of it. That light will blind you.
Sun too.
I put those fibers together and we had a problem with blindness.
That's why he's
Yeah.
wearing, that's why he's wearing glasses.
Wait a minute.
See my eyes
Did you look at it this way or this way? All right, so we need to take a look at some of the codes and try to incorporate or put together. Also, maybe contact Cohen.
Yeah, is that like a consulting firm for something like this? Is that what
No,
you're?
it's a law firm.
Oh, a law firm. We have a lawyer.
This is what they specialize in.
Oh,
You
okay.
don't get a fee for, like, sending us to
I'm
them.
a big advocate of not inventing the wheel. He's already done it.
All right, so you're saying that we could use them though to help us craft a law, or?
For a fee, I'm sure they will be more than happy to work with the Village of Webster.
See, that's
They're
what.
not gonna do it pro bono.
No, I understand. Attorneys
But
want the
that's
money.
one of the things that they do, is they work with municipalities to craft local legislation.
So that was my question. Thank you for answering my
Yeah,
question.
it's all, take a peek.
Yes, yes, it's all it needs.
Oh, I'm sorry, I gave you the Jake answer.
Wait a second. That was being good.
Perfect, yeah, see, wire facilities regulation. I would be in favor of contacting them and
Check
finding
them
out.
Would you like to do that?
Yeah, okay, sure, I guess I could do that.
You're in favor of it.
Do you want to vote on an
Point
amount?
of contact.
No, get,
Let us know what
I'll
it is.
call them and find out what their fees are, and, you
Yeah.
know, and what we're interested in.
Okay. Hopefully they don't work for the.
You know, just addressing that situation.
No, they seem to be mostly, working for municipalities.
I wouldn't want to.
Where are they out of, you know?
Pittsburgh.
Oh, okay.
They have to be, in order to put this unit out there.
This is, thank you. One down there next week.
Yeah, just like this cell tower.
One down there.
Once we get one out, and the other one.
yeah.
Well, they charge us hourly, probably don't want to be talking about.
Yeah, well, that's right. Ross,
Yes,
so,
it is. All right,
Somebody
so
can say yes in less than 20
let's put this on an agenda in the future. It will come up again. We'll take a look at some of the New York State codes that are on here. You guys found one for Port Chester, and we can look at a few more that might be available to us. And you'll contact them, get an idea, get back to the board as to what they might charge as a consulting fee and what we can do moving forward. It's something that we do need to address, and I'd like to be sure that it doesn't just slip away from us. And yes, the idea of putting it with wind and with solar is very good.
Yeah.
Solar companies are,
Solar will be easy. Wind,
well, I don't think we have, do we have a height limit? We do, don't we?
well,
I don't think we can get up high.
Under
enough
200
with,
feet.
for radio antennas. And that's how we've kind of slipped it in the back door. We've set that cellular, it is kind of technically radio communication things, but yes and no. But we need to really, Don and I talked about changing a few things in the code, presenting it to the board, or proposals.
Very good. Thank you all for participating in that discussion. I would like to address one more thing on the agenda, and that is on May 24th, I received an email regarding the resignation of Judy Burnett from the planning board, effective on June 1st. June 1st has come and gone, and last year we were putting out inquiries to village residents if anyone was interested in serving as alternates or being an alternate or serving on a board. And I did have a number of people who responded to that, one of them being a young lady, Karen Windhorn. She teaches at the School for the Deaf, I believe, and she has a great interest in serving in the village. Her mother served, I believe, on the board in the past.
Yeah, Jill Manley was on the zoning board.
She was.
Yep.
And so I made the appointment to fill the position that has been vacated, and she will serve until 2021, I believe. And her name is Karen Windhorn.
Formerly
And
Nally.
she is all up and ready to go. All paperwork, the oath has been taken, and she will be sitting this Thursday at the board meeting.
Good.
Very good.
We have a full complement.
I want to say one thing real quick, is that we received a card from Monroe County for our community development block grant. Never in all the years have we ever received a card from community development. And basically in the card, everybody cited, hey, nice job and everything. They were giving us kudos for the way we communicated and executed our contract and with the sidewalks and everything. So I'm saying that just to give Jake some kudos, because I know that he's pretty much spearheaded this. So that when I leave, he can take it over.
Did you give that card to Jake?
I did, but
We should-
in his humility, he just said, no, like.
You could frame that.
Took a half hour to say it,
Good,
but.
frame.
I think we should give him a clap.
Don't we have a whole lot of frames now like that up there? Didn't we buy like 16 of them or something?
We
Yeah.
have several
Yeah.
more, yes.
Maybe we could take just one of the frames and.
No, those were too expensive.
Hang in the hallway.
And I think it was because of that we got the extra money for the sidewalks.
Did a great job, got it done, maybe real quick.
We should send Mama thanks for the extra 14 grand.
Some donuts.
Yeah, something.
I also want to say thank you to the guys today. They got them all in and did a great job putting the emerald arborvitaes around the new cell tower fencing. And they staggered them very nicely, and I think when they fill out, it'll be a good definition
Nice.
along that road. And,
So you approve, man?
I do approve. They do need to be, the ones in front, however, we're gonna have to probably burlap for the winter because they're a little too close to the road with the snow and salt.
So, yeah.
But they're gonna look good.
Very good.
So- Anything else for the good of the order?
Jake?
Yes, Jake.
I just wanted to take a minute and thank everybody for the time that everyone gave me, and when my mom was in the hospital and stuff there, it was very helpful to be with her, and much appreciated. And I did receive a card yesterday that there was a donation made by the office, employees here and everybody, and coordinating for the Calisano, so that'll work out nice. I look forward to giving an update on what they do with that. We're looking to work with one family and help some kid, like my mom was out there when she was a kid, so. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Well, thank you all for coming. It is now 8:09, and I will take a motion to adjourn.
I make that motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you all for coming.
We should have done that.
I don't know if I handed.
It's only this year.
We gotta put something over that.
Like that, right?
When do you come and
I don't know.
Decided.
No.
So, Will, you want to call them?
Yeah, shot in half.
That lot